welcome back to the Sporting Global podcast. And today we're here with my very good friend, Shelley Alingas. And Shelley, thank you for taking the time and welcome to our podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's
Absolutely.
been a long time.
Been too long. We've been using the last 30 minutes catching up before we started the podcast, and we have a lot to talk about nonetheless. It's so much going on in this crazy world right now, and it's and we're literally on the other side of the world from each other.
All right.
And here we are, speaking with each other, no problem. The beauty of technology.
Yeah. Oh, thank God for technology.
Right. I mean, imagine if that would be gone, we would be in a very bad situation.
Yeah, agreed.
but I think for all the people that are listening in here today, I think it would be great, Shelley. I mean, me and you, we know each other well, but the majority, I think that are listening here would love to know a little bit about yourself, your background. So if you could just, give a short intro, that would be amazing before we dive into the topic.
Awesome. So again, I'm Shelley Alingas. Thanks for having me. Absolutely. I currently live in Tokyo, but my hometown is San Diego, California. So I'm a huge California girl. I love it. A little bit of background, actually I started out my career in the environmental field. I was a huge activist. So worked with a lot of nonprofits, mission-based nonprofits, anywhere from volunteer management to grassroots organizing to digital marketing, which then kind of took me into a career of higher education.
Yeah.
And then that led to me doing this wonderful master's program called the Sport Management Program at the University of San Francisco.
There you go.
And then eventually
you met some great people there,
I met some amazing people. One of them right here.
Without, mentioning any names, but
had a lot of great memories, was challenged very hard. And one of the big things that the sport management program teaches us is to push ourselves and meet new people and network. Absolutely. And build our network, because that's very valuable. And through that network, fortunately, is how I got my job at Twitter.
Right.
And led me here.
And you worked a little bit for Twitter in California as well before you obviously moved to Tokyo. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. But I kind of want to hear a little bit of how your journey into the sport industry sort of began, right? It's sort of of course, you joined the program and everything, but what was it about? You're I want to how did it start, and why sports?
That's I kind of going back into this story. So as a kid growing up, I mean, I love sports. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this have similar stories of growing up and falling in love with a sport, and that sport for me was baseball. And I get a lot of that influence from my dad. So my dad is originally from Japan, but then grew up in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And specifically Oakland. So he was a huge Oakland sports fan. We never went a Sunday, during football season without watching the Raiders. Right. And he took me to my first baseball game at Oakland Coliseum to watch the A's when I was about 6 years old. And so I think just watching my dad love sports so much is why I fell in love with sport, played sports growing up.
Yeah.
And in high school, I was the editor-in-chief of my newspaper. Nice. And I loved covering sports at my high school. That was my favorite thing. I got to get the press pass and be on the sidelines, especially when our football team went to the championships.
Right.
And I was just I wonder if people do this as a career.
Yeah.
This is really naive thinking as a kid of
you're oh, interesting.
Yeah. I was can I do this forever?
Well, technically you can. You can.
You can, and people are still doing it. I mean, it's still, sports media is very much alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was one option I was kind of playing with as far as what do I do when I go to college?
Right.
And I'm going to go get a journalism degree.
Yeah.
But life is funny and takes you to different directions.
For sure.
I wanted to go to the University of California, Santa Cruz.
Mm,
and I was very set on going to this university. And unfortunately, they cut their journalism program right before my freshman year.
mm.
Um, but
Everything
as we're
happens for a reason, right?
everything happens for a reason, and just like everybody's adapting now, I just adapted. I was just like, well, that's
Yeah.
not a big deal. Like, I can write in any major I do. That's not going to deter me from becoming a writer or whatever I want to be.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and but then that that like, again, as I said, it took me down an environmental route and
Yeah.
wanting to be an activist and really make an impact in the world in that way.
Nice.
So I departed from sports for a long time, but of course I was still a fan.
Yeah. I mean, like you
Forever.
don't lose the passion for sports. You know, it's
Never. Yeah, you're going. And what I also love about sports, like the travel and going to and sporting events, which is so
right.
interesting to me, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually, my career path went like this. I ended up back in San Francisco, heard about the sport management program, and I was like, I took it as a sign.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe it's time to come back to that
Right.
original passion.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people feel this in their career where they're like, I feel like I'm hitting a ceiling.
Mm,
Where do I go from here? Like, I'm kind of getting bored. I'm kind of feeling like I'm not being challenged or growing.
right.
What action can I take?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that was just like, okay, this is a clear action I can take. And I jumped headfirst and totally devoted my time to the classroom, but also
Yeah.
like working for sports nonprofits. I got a
Right.
job at Cal Athletics,
Yeah.
um, and then eventually Twitter. But what was really cool was that I was finding that a lot of my skills, even though I came from a different industry,
Right.
were transferable, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's not like it's not one or the other. It's like, oh, I can use this skill in this
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. And sort of
Um,
adapt it, right, to like whatever
yeah,
the industry that you're in, and fine tune it, and keep it as specific and relevant as you can. And I mean, like, kind of like remembering, like, I think like one of our first like meetings working together was like as part of San Francisco City Football Club's like game day, right? And you were like, obviously interviewing like the players and the coaches, and I was doing like game day operations, and we had like this good old photo, lying somewhere on the internet. We're just like taking the photo from each other. We look at this now and we're like, we've been growing a lot since then. It's been like, three,
yeah,
4 years now, and like probably four. And it's funny to look back, at these moments, and cherish these moments, because this is also
oh,
like, this is our journey, how that our journey began, in a sense, together.
yeah.
It's kind of funny, looking
It's
back.
it's quite cute if I can use that word. Yeah, I think it's quite cute. But
I'll
also
let you,
like,
I'll let you use it. I'll let you use
yeah, let's use
it.
it. It is nice because like all of that experience. I mean, you doing operations and like me doing sideline reporting, of course I don't do sideline reporting now, but like those are skills that we took and experiences that we took that actually has formed, you know,
Right.
the roles we're in now, but also the people we are now.
Yeah.
It's just it's really cool that it all accumulates. Nothing is a waste of time. I never
Right.
believed that.
No, 100%. And I'm very like profound of like the whole everything happens for a reason, and utilizing the most out of the time that when you're there, whether that's, and I think a lot of people now are sort of like, what am I gonna do? It's maybe like you're doing online classes, or like you have like a weird situation going on, and like at the end of the day, it's sort of like up to you, what you do out of it, and try to make the most out of the situation. Like, what can you do, like building network digitally, or what it might be. But Shelley, I think we got to dive into like what's going on with in your Tokyo journey. And obviously
Yes.
right now you're the live brand studio manager at Twitter Japan. And I'm kind of like curious, first of all, like, did you ever plan on working internationally, and was Japan on your radar at the time, or like how did that happen?
Yeah, I right. I don't know.
Nobody
uh,
knows. You just ended up in Tokyo, and here we are.
I think I think to simply answer your question is no.
Yeah.
No. But then to go back to like what we were talking about and how these little things kind of accumulate, I
Right.
think it's really important to, even when you don't know where you're headed or what's going to happen, or you just
Yeah.
can't, because you can't see that far. I mean,
Right.
we're only human. It's like you just have faith oh
Yeah.
man, I have no idea where this is going to lead, but I'm just going to keep doing it and keep building energy, and it's totally going to lead somewhere.
Right.
And in my journey, that just happened to be, with Twitter and this awesome opportunity to go and relocate to Tokyo.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, I can play stupid and just say like I was lucky.
Right.
But I really want to give myself credit and just be like,
No,
you know
of
what,
course, and you should.
I did the work. Yeah, I did the work, and I positioned myself so when this opportunity came, I could fully say yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, no, I mean, I think I had dreams of living
Yeah.
and working abroad.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that would look like, especially in sport. And I never thought I would end up at a company like Twitter. And
But
it's not,
I remember, sorry for like cutting
no
in here, but I
worries.
was like remembering like we talked like when you were working for Twitter in California on one of my journeys back to the States. And we were talking, like you were mentioning for me like about this, and I was like how did that come up, and like what are you gonna do, and you're like, oh my god, should I leave, should I, like, what should I do? And we're gonna talk a little bit about that later too, about like what, like sometimes you just gotta like go for it, like
Mhm.
sometimes you just gotta put that foot out and take advantage of the opportunity that is ahead of you,
Yeah,
because obviously it's, new country, new challenges, a lot of stuff to deal with, but think about the learning, how much you can learn
Mhm.
and gain from it. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, no one is saying you're going to be in Japan forever.
Oh,
Maybe you will, maybe you
no.
won't. I don't know, but it's part of the journey. Kind of like taking those chances when they're there too, and make the most out of it. Um,
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think for a lot of my career, when I've made choices, it's
yeah,
because it's like, oh, will I learn something?
right.
Yes. Okay, cool. Let me do that.
No, exactly. Like it's
Be
always
really
about
simple
value,
with
right?
that. Yeah, totally.
But obviously, as we mentioned like several times now, you've been working at Twitter in California and Twitter in Japan. And I think it's like for people maybe like wanting to work for like a global brand, I think it's kind of like
Right.
interesting to like, because obviously, the world is so connected now, and you have like, hubs in, maybe it's Scandinavia or like US, like
Mm-hmm.
UK, Japan, like what it is, like you have these, HQs and big corporation based everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And what has been sort of the biggest difference from you, like going from California to like Japan? And do you still sort of like feel that the Twitter culture is coming true, like the
Mm,
one that is sort of like started in Silicon Valley and in
right.
California when you're in
Right.
Japan, of course?
Yeah, I think what's really great with working at Twitter is that wherever you go,
Yeah,
if you visit any of our offices in the world, obviously in a post-COVID world,
yeah,
um, you get that Twitter feel. You
nice,
feel like you have a home. Like we really like. I really love everyone I work with. Like I consider it my family, like a work family. And so like you
nice.
feel like you have another home to come to. It's
Yeah,
very welcoming. It has that Twitter feel um, that's quite unique. And but what I also love about Twitter is that it also adapts to the culture, the local culture, right? And I think
right.
that's really
Yeah,
important. Um, I think a lot of global companies make the mistake of saying, this is our headquarters, this is our base,
right,
everyone follow this template
right.
and get in line.
Yeah,
I think there are core values that we all share globally as a company
absolutely.
while also being sensitive to the local culture and
Right,
kind of the values that are here and like just the uniqueness that each kind of market has to offer.
for sure.
And so, yeah, there's a balance there. And I'm not saying that, we have it right,
Yeah,
but I think we know how to have the conversation.
right.
And our platform reflects that as well.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, like
Hmm.
it's sort of like the one platform where you can, be yourself in a sense,
Hmm.
and share what you want. And I think like
Yeah.
it's important, as you said, that the culture inside the company represents that. What is not only the platform, but like, what the organization stands for. And I think it's very important, as you said, talking about values, core values, that, you should obviously have like some pillars, some,
Mm,
foundation of like what the organization is built upon. And then,
yeah.
every market is different. Like it's sort of like talking about, you always use like this sort of like sales reference. I know like a lot of people out there, I'm not like a fan of like the sales thing, but
Mhm.
it's sort of like, speaking with people like in Norway or in US or in the UK or in Japan, they all have different ways of doing business.
Yes.
And if you don't learn those ways, it's going to be really hard for you. So
Yes.
I think it's sort of like the way of like, with the culture as well, is that of course, like you will have like your set of skills of like how to sell, but you gotta fine tune it and build it based on wherever you're doing it. So,
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
different metrics. I mean, like that's my closest analog. Although I'm
Yeah.
entering a business, I'm not that big yet, so I can do
No,
this.
but I think you have a lot of global experience, and that's what I mean, you talk to all kinds of people all the time, and you've traveled all over the world. So
Yeah,
you had this sense already, and I think because I started in headquarters and went outside,
yeah,
it wasn't until I fully made that move that I got that perspective of like,
right.
oh man, oh no, like think the American way does not fit here,
Yeah,
you know?
Looking into the future, the beginner faces a choice that leads him to the triumph, or not. Being surrounded by like-minded professionals can be the best guarantee that you actually take that crucial career step.
Sport in Global is a digital network for sports jobs. It gives you the chance to be involved in the sports industry no matter who you are, regardless of gender, nationality, and experience.
Our AI system matches up talent with human resources. Candidates who align with the company's values and needs immediately get shortlisted. It saves time for HR and increases the opportunities available to applicants.
The platform identifies tailor-made recommendations based on user needs, so you're always aware of the possibilities out there right now.
Sport in Global is a place where students gain key tips about jobs and build the valuable connections that are essential for people at the beginning of their career path.
The path from candidate to champion starts with a single step in the right direction. Sign up to Sport in Global.
Sport in Global, the best way to enter the sports industry.
I mean, Japan and America, if you do any culture mapping, they're quite on the opposite
right.
end of the spectrum in many ways.
Yeah,
And so it forced me to learn a lot, and it
absolutely.
forced me to adapt the way I communicate,
Yeah.
adapt the way I like do strategy, how I run my team. It's
Right.
just there's a lot of things that you have to consider when you're just communicating as well. So it's a whole lot of learning. It's very interesting though.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the cool part of being internationally, right? It's sort of like
Mm.
that adapting to a new culture and the way of doing things.
Mhm.
And I was like, what has been sort of like the biggest difference that you've been seeing? And you've been talking a little about sort of like, comparing the US
Mhm.
and the Japanese culture, but like, is there anything else that were like when you got there, you're like, wow, didn't expect that,
Oh my God, so many. I mean, it's been 2 years now, so sometimes it's hard for me
Yeah,
to
so,
go
so
back.
now
And
you
like,
have
oh,
so much.
what were those things that were really
Yeah.
shocking to me when I moved here? But like,
Right.
I think a huge difference, especially, I mean, work and outside of work, is like Japanese people are very indirect when they communicate.
Right.
Americans, we're pretty explicit in our communication, and that comes with a lot of years of having a huge immigrant population and like
Yeah.
having this common language that we use English.
Right.
And having to communicate with each other. In
Right.
Japan, because they're such an ancient culture.
Right.
I mean, they have this language, and there's a lot of high context that, as a foreigner, is just really hard to plug into because you don't have that experience being
Right.
a native Japanese person.
Yeah.
And so sometimes just like communication can be
Right.
all, all over the place. But even within the Japanese culture, I've even heard between Japanese people
Yeah.
can miscommunicate because you're just you're kind of interpreting what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's weird. Like you'll never hear a direct no from a Japanese person, probably. They'll
Interesting.
probably just keep saying yes, even though they mean no. So that's really confusing for an
Wow.
American. You're like,
All right.
"What?
Well, that's.
Wait."
Yeah, I was like, did you really mean yes, or was it like,
Yeah, but like,
yeah,
or
yes, but no?
yes. So you gotta have a
Fascinating.
lot of patience and try to read. They call it reading the air.
Yeah, yeah.
So you kind of need to read in between the lines. Like, what did they actually
Right.
mean?
A lot of thinking though. I like this is. I feel like in Tokyo and Japan, you need like a lot of emotional intelligence skills.
Absolutely, you definitely have to feel the room.
Right. No, but
You have,
I mean, like it is important in general, and I think like it's sort of like this way of learning their ways, and then of course understanding like what does that mean, right? And then it's like a fine balance. But I think as we all are so connected to each other somehow or another, it's kind of like we are more open to understand, I think, and we have to like also be open to start helping each other and like guide each other, a little bit. It's
yeah.
not easy, coming over to wherever it is and like learning the ropes. It's gonna take a little bit time, to get there. So it's gonna be patience, but it's gonna be worth it. I think, for you as well, Shelley, it's been worth spending the 2 years and more to come, in Japan so far. And I was thinking like, obviously right now, like what has been sort of like your, what has been your focus and key responsibilities since you came to Japan, like obviously for Twitter, and how has the current situation sort of like impacted your work, today, and what are some of the challenges that you're facing right now?
Yeah, so I'm on essentially you could think of my team as the live video team. We were created when the NFL Thursday Night Football deal happened with Twitter, and they were streaming Thursday Night Football games on the platform, which was like unprecedented, right? We were learning this in class during our master's program. And so basically my main responsibilities, and they haven't really changed so much, is like working with our Twitter's top partners and clients to help them execute their live stream onto the Twitter platform. So that can look like technical consultation, that can be teaching them our products and our tools. That can also be like monitoring and supporting their live stream, because live streaming is just like any other production, whether we're talking about television broadcasts or whatnot, radio production. So it takes a lot of preparation and testing.
For sure.
So that hasn't changed so much, but the moving to Japan was really quite exciting because I was expanding that team to the Asia region.
Right.
And so bringing this like support team that's based in Tokyo, but we support all of Asia from Australia to India to Korea and Singapore. So that's also been a huge learning. I mean, working with all those different cultures and people have been really exciting. And so we continue to do that, and how the pandemic has impacted us, I think we were one of the lucky businesses where, because it's live streamed, it's virtual, a lot of in-person events were being canceled. And so we had a lot of partners and clients coming to us to stream their events that were canceled. So that's been an extra challenge. I think in some ways we've been getting more business than normal, but also a lot of creativity has come out of it. You have sports properties that are also streaming their games, not only on Twitter, but the other platforms. But where Twitter is like unique is that we've become like, Twitter's always been the place for conversation of what's happening in the world now. And for sports, that isn't different. It's like we're taking, because fans can't be in the stadium, we're taking those fans and making the virtual stadium Twitter, where people, the
Right.
chatter is still happening, the, you know, the boos and the yahoos are happening, you know. It's so
Right.
interesting to see all of that unfold
It's happening
live,
just digitally. Yeah.
just digitally. And, you know,
Yeah.
Twitter's the place to have that kind of conversation and engagement.
Right.
And so that, you know, luckily it's been a positive impact. And so it's been opening a lot of opportunity
Yeah.
for my team and personally for my role to
Right.
kind of expand and get more creative.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as we talked about before as well, like, you know, sometimes you need a crisis in order to nurture innovation and to make innovation to happen. And how you kind of like been feeling on that a little bit from your side, like maybe also personally, you know, kind of like just utilizing this time to being more creative and innovative in your day.
Yeah, I think the fact that life has kind of slowed down has just given me more mental space and like
Yeah.
time
Right.
to kind of think about what do I want?
Right.
Where do I see my life in the future? Who do I want to be? What values do I want to cultivate?
Right.
What relationships do I want to build? So yeah, I think, I mean, there's always a million things you can be doing, but like really coming back to like, how do you nourish this and how do you get the rest you need or whatever the creative juices you need to feel good? Because obviously it's a stressful time and it's sometimes it's really hard to work right now.
It is, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, you know, in terms of, you know, we're living in such a hectic life and hectic days, and like things, the time are flying by so fast. And we're like talking about how many years was it since we started the program? You know, it's been already like four or 5 years.
4 years, yeah.
And I mean, like, it's gone so fast, and we're like, you lose a lot on sort of like on the way, because you're so focused on like what is happening, you know, the next day and the next day and the future, right? And as you said, like utilizing the time now to like breathe, you know, like take a step back and just like what did I want to do? You know, what is my role in this, and like how can I get involved? Like, what do I want to achieve, like both personally and you know, whatever that might be. And I think you're very right on, like, of course, as I said, there's many things you can do in keeping yourself busy, but maybe this is the chance to like look at yourself, you know, work on yourself and figuring out what you want, what you stand for, and what is important for you.
Totally. And some, you know, and sometimes maybe for some people those questions are a little too big. So it's like, think about, what don't you like? Like, what about your life don't you like right now? Or about your job? And taking note of that, okay, like I could do a little less of that in the future, a little more of this in the future. I really like the people aspect of, you know, working in this role. I want to work with more people in this way. Like understanding yourself. We talked about emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is a part of that. Of like, you are a human in this world and you have something to contribute. We all have skills. But like, what is that unique value add that you can bring? And that makes you happy, right?
Right. And that's the most important thing, that you're happy, that you're following whatever you're passionate about and you want to like contribute with. And that can change too, you know, it will change, and it's part of like your journey, and you know, take it as it is. And sort of like, you know, we're starting to come to an end here. And I was thinking like, you know, like obviously, you know, both of us have sort of like, you know, been internationally, whether studying or working. And I was thinking like from your side, like what kind of tips do you have for any student that are sort of like, you know, maybe curious, you know, about working or studying abroad? Maybe it's a little bit, you know, challenging right now, but I mean, like it's still possible in a sense of like maybe doing them virtually and like being part of that international environment. But what kind of tips do you have for those that are like, maybe I should do that, maybe I want to do that, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yes, like follow that feeling. It's only, I mean, I think it's so important to kind of get out of your own worldview, no matter what that is, and to understand how other people live, how other people think, how other people work. So yeah, follow that curiosity, whether that's just, you know, kind of doing your own research and reading books or articles on that type of culture or that country, or maybe I learn a lot through learning the language. So I'm learning Japanese right now.
Yeah.
And then so I'm connecting with a lot of Japanese natives. And there's a lot of virtual kind of language tutoring you can do.
Yeah.
And just connecting with somebody on that other side of the world,
Right.
having a conversation with them and just kind of like, how do you live? Like, what is your apartment like? Like, what
Right.
food do you eat?
Is it
Just
now we get a tour of your
understand.
apartment? No, I'm just kidding.
What was that?
Is it now we get a tour of your apartment?
Right. This is kind of it. Just kidding. Tokyo apartments are quite small.
Right.
But yeah, like, yeah, just follow that curiosity and make those connections, because the beauty of this time is that you can virtually connect with anybody in the world.
Right.
And so when the time does come, or the opportunity does come where you could physically go there,
Right.
you've laid the foundation for yourself.
Yeah, it's a good advice, I think, and being like curious about, whatever, and exploring more opportunities. Like I always said, like originally, like back in the day before I went to the US and everything, like I was really planning to study or like work in the UK. Like that was like my plan. So
Yeah.
I never even thought about like going to the US, to be fair. And
Right.
then I was like found USF and I was like, this seems great. This seems like a great program, and it's changed my life. Like I started my own business. I met, great people like Shelley and others, and we went to South Africa together as part of the program too. So like, what I think, like, from my side of like some tips is that, I would say, sometimes you just gotta go for it, and you just gotta try and learn as you go. And I think you will benefit way more than you think maybe you would, because it's just like so much that you can learn, both from like personally standpoint, like professionally, or what it might be on your journey and what you want to achieve. But the first thing is to take that step, whether that's, going to like, a new city, or like a new country, or what it might be, or a new job, or new industry. There's so much to learn from it, but you got to take that first step.
Totally.
And
like again, bringing it back to like, have faith.
Yeah.
Have faith that you can do it.
Believe in your
Like,
journey,
it might be
yourself.
super scary, but trust me, you will survive.
Absolutely.
You will figure it out.
Well, you'll figure it out, and you will use the people around you, to help guide you. Use the people that, and we're so globally right now. There's there's a way of, like, as Shelley said too, like she's learning the language. There are people like she can speak with. Obviously you're there, but it's like you have those online courses, classes, and take advantage of that, and try to, like, okay, what's their interesting speaker? Maybe try reaching out to them, getting their perspective, learning, their story, their journey. And I think, like, at the end here, I think maybe like there's a lot of people here that, especially in these days, where tech companies are really like on the boom. You can see like Zoom, obviously Twitter and all these are already doing well, like Twitch and others, especially in these times too. And I think, like, what kind of tips do you have in terms of, like, how do you get noticed by like these tech companies working with sports? Because obviously we want to keep it within the sports field.
Yeah.
But like, what kind of skill set? And of course, like, I understand there's different departments and all this stuff, but
Sure.
are there like some common threads, that people should, like, try to be aware of?
I think, like you said this before we started recording, but like, foundation is people.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, when it comes to our recruiting, we are looking for people who have the same values as us.
Right.
So do your homework on the company that you're kind of interested in, and really understand their culture, and the values that they exude. Stalk people online, because we can do that. You can go on people's Twitter profiles of jobs that you're interested in, and just see what kind of personalities they have, and kind of like how they communicate to the world.
Right.
And yeah, somebody who's really good at connecting with people, because if you're thinking about, let's say, like a sport partnership role at Twitter, you are connecting with people every day, not only externally but internally.
Right.
And so you need to know how to collaborate cross-functionally. You need to know how to talk to people who may not come from not only your culture, like we were talking about earlier, but maybe like your function culture,
Right.
finance people, engineers,
Yeah.
they all talk differently than
They all have their
salespeople. And you
language.
kind of need to know how to translate, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say for me, it's, I would want to be able to grab a beer with that person and
Right.
like feel like I trust them to do the work. Because a lot of these tech companies need you to run, and they need you to run fast, and they need you to get the job done, however that looks like. And so people got to like you, people got to trust you, you got to be a good communicator. And I think that'll translate in most kind of sports roles you might be looking
100%. And it's a fast-paced industry, so and as you said, I mean, like we talked already a little bit today about the culture, the importance of culture, the foundation. And I think like for any young professional out there, whether that's working for a tech company, like within the sports side or whatever it is, I think first step is like looking at your values and like understanding what you stand for. And then try to that's obviously why we started Sporting Global too, to help you find an organization that align with your values, so you can kind of help find where you can provide the most value and where you fit in. Because as Shelley talked about, it's about people, it's about being part of that culture that Twitter stands for, and you got to understand yourself first, and then more easily then I think you would be more able to find those companies that you align with and what you stand for. And then that is very important, and this is why we exist, to help you on that, so you're not alone. Yeah, you're not. And like, think about how to show your value as well. Your CV is one thing, like your previous roles are one thing, but really showing how you lived those values. Absolutely.
It's really important.
Well, Shelley, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure having you part of the podcast. We could probably keep going for a long time with both personal stories, but I think we'll save some of those for behind the scenes.
Maybe virtual happy hour someday.
Virtual happy hour. That sounds like a good plan. I'm up for it. So Shelley, I will once again thank you so much for the time. And with every video, whatever we make, we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means "see you later" in Norwegian.
Vi snakkes.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Well done. That's super.